What's up, VC? What's up, Vinyl community? It's Dan hanging out with you for Dan's Vinyl Channel. How you guys doing? You guys having a good start to your weekend? It's all about halfway done now, isn't it? Okay, so there's this dude. His name is Dino, and he's over at Punk Eye Records. And this is a new channel to me. I don't know how new his channel is. It's just new to me. I saw that Beth over B-Sides did a new wave music tag, and she tagged everybody. And so one of my friends, Brian, over at Cosmic Vinyl, he did one, and I was like, I got to get in on this action because new wave is my jam. You know, and I realized this as I sat down to do this video, and I was adjusting my camera. I'm wearing like a Metallica shirt and a Death hat, and I'm doing a new wave music tag. So the guys that would have, like, the fans of this that I grew up with, like, in what would have been, middle school, would totally make fun of me for every single record that I'm about to show you. I don't know. There's an irony going on in this. Anyway, wanted to get on with the tag. So I checked out Dino's channel. You should check it out, Punk Eye Records. I'll link the his new wave music tag below. You should check out Dino's channel. It's a cool channel, cool guy. He's an 80s kid too. So, all right. So I was 5 to 15 in the 80s. So, well, actually, 4 to 15 in the 80s. So that's like crazy time to develop like music. So there's a lot of stuff of this new wave that I don't really remember until I hear it, and then it just comes back and it hits me. And that's what's been happening lately. I've really been getting into a lot of the new wave, a lot of the synth pop, and a lot of the 80s records. And the crazy thing about it, guys, is a lot of these records are so super cheap, and they're so good. Like, they're incredible records. So let's get going on. So my favorite new wave band from the 80s, who is that? Whereas I don't really have a favorite new wave band of the 80s. I just have my favorite that I'm listening to now. So, I mean, if we had to say my favorite new wave band of the 80s would be The Cure. I guess you could consider them new wave, especially their earlier albums, which I absolutely adore The Cure. But it's like I want to talk about some of the stuff that I'm listening to now. So my favorite new wave band of the 80s right now is somebody that I really didn't listen to much in the 80s because they weren't really incredibly mainstream. And that's this band called Talk Talk. And this is an album that I've shown several times in the VC, and I think it's an important album by Talk Talk. The Party's Over. This is their synth pop album. And the cool thing about Talk Talk is that every single album that you get by Talk Talk, there's a progression. So whereas this one is more new wave synth pop style. Let's wait for this thing to... Okay. New wave synth pop style of music. Their next album would introduce more instrumentation that would be... You would hear more acoustic guitars. You would hear more instruments. More drum sounds, like real drum sounds. Also, in their after It's My Life came out, which is the album that came after this, there's an album called The Color of Spring, which would like introduce even more amazing music and just this progression. So while they're not a progressive band, well, there is some elements of progressiveness. These guys they really progressed every single album. So the Talk Talk collection, which there's 2 other albums that I need to finish out their collection, is definitely one to check out. And these guys, I don't know, maybe for the past year or so have been my favorite. I just can't get sick of them. I gave $4 for this masterpiece of an album. So if you ever see this, and it's priced accordingly, guys, it's worth it. It's a great, great record. Talk Talk is a great, great band. So my favorite genre of 80s new wave. So I guess, there's a lot of different genres. There's like your post-punk, your goth. Mine is synth pop all the way right now. At least right now. I'm really loving the synth pop. Sorry, guys, I need some coffee. So I'm really loving the synth pop right now as far as a subgenre of 80s new wave. So that would be my favorite, synth pop by a long shot right now. So my favorite album, cassette, or CD that I own from the 80s, well, I'm doing this all in vinyl. So my favorite as of right now, since we're going to keep with the kind of new wave, would be this record by The Cult. This is Dreamtime. I kept running into this record everywhere I would go, and it would be in bad shape. And I finally just broke down and did a Discogs transaction, and it was as described. Pretty minty. There is some little bends in the corners here, but it did have shrink wrap on it. But since this is an import from the UK, it's very flimsy. I didn't like the way that the shrink was pulling on the record, so it always tends to kind of roughen up the edges and you get creases and whatnot. But this was actually a really good Discogs transaction. However, what I didn't realize is that this is not from this is on the lowdown from Beggar's Banquet, which is, I guess, a different pressing company. But there's a defect in this record, and I'm sure this is just probably a one-off defect. Now, if any of you guys own this lowdown copy, I would be curious to know if on Go West there's a dead groove, and that's the last track of side one. Now, during that, it skipped, and I got upset because this record looks minty fresh. So I looked at the record where it was, and I couldn't, but I saw one groove. It looked like was just blank through the whole thing, like it had gotten skipped. So right in the last 40 seconds or so of Go West, he's going through the chorus a couple of times, and bam, it's just a skip, and it's about the length of a revolution. So it was very strange. I'd never ran into that before. If you guys ever ran into that, let me know, because I feel this is an anomaly that doesn't happen too often. Maybe QC was not on their game. But, regardless of that, this is a great record. It sounds phenomenal. This is a cool alternate cover. The original one had like a figure dancing on it. This one has like some kind of shamanistic with an American flag motif going on. But The Cult's Dreamtime, just a great album. This is more of a new wave album by The Cult, more goth, new wave, kind of has that Love and Rockets thing going on than you would get normally from The Cult in their subsequent releases, especially once you start hitting like electric, where the rock and roll really starts to kick in. So, excited to have that. Sorry, I just went on a tangent about that Cult record. I could talk about, you guys, we could call this channel The Cult, and I could just talk about how awesome Ian Astbury and Billy Duffy are. But we won't do that this time. All right, so favorite new wave artist that I have seen live. I wish I had seen The Cult live. I had a chance to go see The Cult live several times, and I missed out. I had a chance to go see The Cure live, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago. They played in Kansas City. I didn't go. I don't know why. It was probably money, I'd imagine. So I had to do some digging on this one. So unless you would consider the Red Hot Chili Peppers a new wave band, which in their first album, perhaps, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, maybe you get into some new wave stuff in like, it's freaky styling, not really. I'm trying to think. So I came up with, I've seen Ministry. And a lot of you guys are going to be like, what, Ministry? They're like, industrial metal band, maybe some electronic. But they had an album that came out in the early 80s, and I want to say it was like 1982. The album was called With Sympathy. Now, is it With Sympathy? Let me make sure. Take a look here. With Sympathy, yes. And I've seen this album in the wild one time. It was in Denver when I was recently on vacation. And I've never seen it out. But there's a track on there that I'm aware of called Revenge, and it's very synth pop, very gothy kind of synth pop. going on with Ministry. Check it out. Al Jorgensen had like spiky hair, long earrings. It was great. It's a fantastic song. It's called Revenge by Ministry. You should definitely check it out. I did see Ministry in the 90s. They didn't do any of that stuff. I mean, this was around the time where the album, I don't know how you pronounce it. We always called it Psalm 69, but it had Just One Fix, New World Order. It had the song Psalm 69 on it. We would always listen to this, and we went and saw Ministry, and they put on a great show. They didn't do any of that older synth pop stuff, but I guess you could consider Ministry that. I wish I could show you that record with Sympathy, but I couldn't purchase it. The reason being is that while the record had, it was kind of beat up. It was definitely used, and it had scuffs, and I go to pull it out of the wrap, and I go to the listening station, because I do that from time to time. I'll be like, this record looks a little rough. I'm going to go to the listening station. Well, it had a special wrapper on it. It was like one of those flap wrappers, like you get with the music on vinyl, where you had to, like, peel it up. So I go to open it, and I'm looking at the record. I'm getting ready to put it on the listening station, and the owner comes over. He's like, no. You can't listen to that one. Those that are sealed, you can't listen to. You just have to buy them. So I'm like, well, I'm not going to buy it. If you give me, 40, 50 seconds with it to make sure it's not too noisy, I might have walked out with it. But I'm not going to buy a record that's unlistenable. I've been in this situation before, guys. I got burned really hard on a cult record. It's not going to happen again. So anyway, it's not like I spent a lot of money on that cult record. It was actually a good price on it, but still, what a disappointment. That record didn't even look that bad. So anyway, let's move on to the next question here. Let me see here. All right, so that was number 4, and the favorite new wave 80s artist I'd seen was Ministry. So technically. Favorite MTV music show from the 80s, without a doubt, Remote Control. I can't even begin to describe how this television show worked. You had to guess videos at the end. The winner would guess videos. There was trivia questions that you had to answer about, like, 80s pop culture, TV pop culture, stuff like that. So, Remote Control. Colin Quinn, you got to check it out. Just do a Google search. YouTube, it's great. So if you haven't seen Remote Control, make sure you check it out. Now, I could also argue that Headbangers Ball was one of my favorite TV shows. I could also argue that I loved 120 Minutes. But it was Remote Control was my favorite, obviously. So there you go. What album, cassette, or CD from the 80s would I take with me on a deserted island? Now, I'm not gonna bust it out. I've busted out this comp. It's MTV's Rock and Roll to Go. That would definitely go with me. But I didn't want to bust that one out. But what I did want to mention, and I mentioned this band already, this album would have to go with me wherever, if I was on a deserted island and they had a turntable, I would have to have Disintegration with me. So this would be the new wave album that I have to have with me. This is Disintegration by The Cure. It's them at their best. I mean, just this glorious record. It's beautifully done. It's not the original. I hear the original doesn't even sound that good. So this is the reissue, and I'm very excited to have it. So The Cure's Disintegration, one of the finest albums of the 80s, one of the finest albums, in my opinion, of all time. Robert Smith's masterpiece, moody masterpiece. Love it. Disintegration, that one's definitely going with me. So what song from the 80s have I played more than any other song? And, like, are we talking, like, overall? And I've got to bring this up in the next. I'm going to bring this up in the next one of the following questions. Played more than any time. Any. What? Okay, hold on. Sorry. No edits, guys. What song from the 80s have I played more than any other song? Well, when I worked in radio, I fell in love with this group, and I will love them forever. And I'm going to talk about this album again coming up here soon. And that would be Simple Minds, Don't You Forget About Me. Now, I also have the 12-inch single of that, but I decided to bust this one out because I want to talk about it, because there is a soundtrack question at the end of this, and this deserves a very special mention for a very specific reason. However, Simple Minds, Don't You Forget About Me, check out that hype sticker on it. I love it. So, yes, Don't You Forget About Me has definitely gotten the most played. I mean, if we're talking, I'm going to keep this in the new wave thing. Now, if you want to go the other way, you probably have to either say something by Metallica, possibly Blackened or One by Metallica would have been played more than any other song. Probably more than Simple Minds. However, I worked in radio forever. I'm still not tired of that song. I could play it right now, and it just, I get the feels just like I would back in the 80s or back in the 90s whenever I would listen to it. So that's it. Don't You Forget About Me by Simple Minds. All right, moving on. Favorite 80s group or artist I have seen live. So like I said, guys, I haven't really seen a lot. So what I'm going to say, and I'm not going to show any of the records. I have their first 4 albums, and I've shown them in another video before. I have seen Def Leppard. So I'm going to consider them. I think technically On Through the Night may have come out in 1979. I'm not sure. You would have to ask my friend Bev from Clarkovision about that. However, I have seen them, and they were absolutely phenomenal. And I also have seen I've seen Maiden, I've seen Megadeth, I've seen Metallica, I've seen Slayer. I've seen all of the big 4 except for Anthrax. But I've seen all these bands, so, you know, it's going to have to be Def Leppard. So, it was a great show, too. My gosh, those guys rocked. All right, so, this next one. And it said this should be fun, and it is fun. And my favorite 80s hairstyle, which I have my phone right here. And I put it down, and I had actually taken a photo. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to do an edit, guys. I'll be right back. And when you know it, guys, it was right in front of me the whole time. I did have my phone with me. So we're talking about hairstyles. So we're going to talk about my favorite hairstyle from the 80s. And I guess this would be more like late 80s, early 90s. Very popular hairstyle. And there was a couple of ways people put it. My sister liked to call it a bi-level. Okay, and I'm not sure exactly if that would be the appropriate name for it. It has another name, and it's a very, very popular hairstyle back then. And you guys don't make fun of me too hard, because you may just break my achy, breaky heart. And this is me and my cousin Jeffrey, if we can get it to actually work here. This is me and my cousin Jeffrey. And as you see, I am supporting the mullet. There's Jeff right there. Got to include him. Look at those 80s glasses. My goodness, those things were huge. He was probably super proud of them, too. But I had that mullet there. And I want to say this was 1989, possibly 1990. But I had the old mullet. And if you notice, there's something very special going on. I had a blonde streak in it, too. Because that was the way that I rolled. I had to have that little blonde streak. So, my sister called it a bi-level. That's what we called it back then. But I guess mullet is the term. And so it's a, business up front, party in the back, guys. That's how it rolls. And if I don't watch out, my friend Brian from Cosmic Volley talks about unfortunate hair situations. If I continue to have this unfortunate hair situation as I approach my mid-40s, I might have what you would call the skullet, which, if you have seen season 3 of Stranger Things, you would know that Bald Eagle had the skullet. And I may rock the skullet, guys. I might be one of those guys. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. Anyway, so that's my favorite. So question number 10, what's your favorite medium? Vinyl, cassette, CD, or 8-track? Well, in the 80s, it was cassette. Now, obviously, it is vinyl. I love vinyl. So, let me see here. Favorite 80s movie soundtrack as we hit into question number 11 and the final song. So, I'm going to show two soundtracks, one I just shown with the Breakfast Club. So, I'm going to go ahead and talk about this one. So, the critics just hate it. I don't know why. I have no idea what's going on and why the critics hate this. Yes, I'm keeping the shrink on this one because I love that hype sticker. I don't want anything to happen to it. Plus, the price was $7.99, and the price here, I bought this at Hit Records in Columbia, was $7.99, and I thought it was kind of cool that through the 36 years or so this album's been out, it has not changed in value. $7.99 36 years ago, $7.99 today. This gets a lot of hate. I don't know why. I don't get it. If you don't like this, that's fine. I get it. But we've got some Wang Chung on here. We've got some great stuff. We Are Not Alone by Carla DeVito's on here. The instrumentals are on here, which are great. And Fire in the Twilight by Wang Chung is a great song. And that's when like Bender and all the guys are running around the school. So the Breakfast Club soundtrack, guys. Come on. Give it a break. My gosh. It's a great soundtrack to own. But I guess because it's so hated and panned, people don't like it. So it sells for like $8. Brand, in great condition. So, but here is my favorite 80s movie soundtrack, and that is The Lost Boys. And this is an original press of The Lost Boys. I wish I could get a hold of that blood red press. It looked pretty cool. This has got some problems. It's got some issues. Got the nice stuff going on here, but Tim Capello does a song on here called I Still Believe. Echo and the Bunnymen do a great version of People Are Strange that Ray Manzarek produced. And that's why it was probably so good, because you have a Door that's producing a cover of the Doors. Jimmy Barnes, NXS do the rock and roll music on it. Good times. Gonna have a good time tonight. Lou Gramm with his Roger Daltrey on here. Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me. I mean, this is just some great stuff. NXS has a couple of tracks on here. Jared McMahon's Cry Little Sister. I mean, come on, guys. You can't get any better. My favorite 80s soundtrack, The Lost Boys by far. Now, if I had the Top Gun soundtrack, I would love that one because of Steve Stevens and his instrumental Top Gun. So, but while we're talking about New Wave, I just want to do a little bonus here. And that is, and it's because, guys, I wasn't aware of these guys until recently. And I had to go, I ran out and I ran into this at that same store in Denver that had the Ministry album, the Ministry record. And I loved it so much. It was a comp. I didn't realize it was a comp, number one, because I wasn't familiar with this band at all. But the band is called Japan. And this dude is named David Sylvian. Now, if you're not familiar with David Sylvian or Japan, they were sorry about that, my phone was going off. David Sylvian and Japan were a glam band. They started doing glam in the late 70s, 77 to 80 or so. And then they had an album called Quiet Life, where they started introducing, and I believe there's another one called Gentlemen Take Polaroids, where they started introducing some of the new wave synth pop elements. So I bought this record blind buy. It was cheap enough. It was like, I want to say it was like $10 or something. And I thought, well, I looked it up and they said they were kind of a synth pop. So I was like, okay, I'll check it out. And I saw the picture on the back. These guys had that kind of gothic, new romantic look. You know, everybody's trying to look like Bowie or, like, look at this guy. He just looks awesome. I mean, just great looking band. And this guy, David Sylvian, had My mom had those glasses and that hairstyle in the 80s. So I'm like, I got to pick this up. And when I put it on, guys, I about freaked out. This is an amazing music. This band is absolutely amazing, and I am working on getting their full catalog. So I just wanted to mention Japan to you guys. If you ever see this, this is a great introduction. And then I picked this up on Discogs. I got a really great deal on this. This is Japan's album that came out in 1981. I want to say it might have been 1982. It's called Tin Drum. And this is them in their full kind of, they wanted to kind of, it's kind of a fusion of, you have Eastern sensibility with some melodies, kind of that Eastern Japanese style music, synth pop. Their bass player, which I can't think of his name right now, is just amazing. He plays a fretless bass, and then he had a band where he was basically, I'm going to look his name up because it's important to me that you guys know who that is, because this guy is amazing. What is his name? And Mick Karn. He's the guy that looked all cool and super gothy in this picture right here. Mick Karn is the bass player for Japan. He played like fretless. Unfortunately, the late great Mick Karn, he passed away, I want to say a few years ago. But if you guys get a chance and you ever run into Japan, check it out. If you don't like it, I'm always here, guys, and willing to accept any Japan that you might not like, because I love this band. Anyway, thanks so much, Dino, for the very, very cool thread and tag. So if you're seeing this, guys, you're tagged. Tag, you're it. Whoever wants to do it. You guys are tagged. We got you. You watched it. You watched it this far. You got tagged. All right? So you guys take it easy. Guys, keep digging them Rekkids. All right? I'm going to try to get some more videos done. I've got such a Vinyl Finds video. Guys, I got this stack of records that I've just been sitting here. And there's another 2 stacks just like it. I want to get into some Vinyl Finds videos, but everybody's doing these cool contests and everybody's doing all this cool like threads and tags. So anyway, you guys take it easy. Peace out. We'll catch you guys on the flip side. Bye.